Hi, I'm Kieran Paul and welcome to the second part of episode 4 of the Almost Art original series, Interpretation. For this experiment, we invited several composers to create a piece to accompany a pre-recorded dance performance by interpreting their style and movements. This segment features Almost Art's very own Jax Richardson, a composer, guitar player and a man with previous dance experience. Let's see how having been a dancer in the past has influenced his interpretation. If you want to check him out more, click the links below.
Well, Jax, it's good to have you on the sofa.
Thank you.
Rather than behind the camera.
Yeah, it makes a change.
It does. Now, I didn't realise until this project that actually you've got dance experience yourself. Did that affect and give you an advantage?
It allowed me to stay, I think, a bit truer to what was happening, because I knew some of the ins and outs of how they go about creating these dances. Because, like a rumba, for example, is very traditional. It has a certain vocabulary of steps that maybe to other people it didn't look like things were being repeated, but there was actually quite a lot of repetition. They were favouring certain beats. For example, like beat 4 is the most important beat in the bar.
Yeah.
And that kind of influenced me. Like, one of the first things I created was the drum beat. And rather than necessarily emphasise beat 4 specifically, I kind of just extended it by ignoring beat 1 as often as I could. So that sort of bass feel that keeps coming in, the fact that the drums only ever really kick in on beat 2, was me just trying to extend beat 4. So that was one way that it influenced me, in that I was able to manipulate the rules I knew were already in place. That might have offered me a bit of an advantage.
And the fact that you've been on the other side of these experiments, were you surprised at how you went about it? Or how you felt during it?
Well, when this first started, I was sort of taken back with how intimidating some people found taking part in these
Yeah,
experiments.
because some people have turned up quite scared, haven't they?
Yeah, and as nice as we've tried to be, yeah, it isn't an intense thing, and I knew that certain people would be nervous about it, but I'd been sort of walking around trying to be, be really morally superior in some ways, and tried to think, I'll be able to treat this for what it is. But the same insecurities crept into me. I suppose that surprised me, the sort of worries of how yours is going to compare to other people. So I was surprised how quickly I felt the same as everyone else. But at the same time, I also got to see all those people go through it and come out the other side quite satisfied and quite... I hope that they felt appreciated, that they just had a chance to showcase what they do. And then, so I just tried to keep that in mind, that this was my chance to just do what I do, without rules, for a change.
Because it's the fear of the unknown, isn't it? That's the main thing. That's the thing that's been really obvious to me. It's the fear of the unknown. But then once you start creating music, I think then sort of those anxieties are removed.
It's very hard to create anything in a vacuum. You've constantly got the idea of how are people going to perceive this, what are they going to compare me to, even down to the instruments you use and the techniques that you use, the way you approach timing. Like, we're all working as professional musicians, and then you've got things like, oh, is this going to affect how people view me as a player to hire me in their band? And all of those kind of thoughts, they get in the way of creating something sort of pure or honest, or to just be unfiltered. So it is scary to do that in any regard. It's even scarier when you have no idea what anyone else is doing, what the people that are presented next to you are doing. Even though it's not a competition, you're still presenting your work alongside them, and you have no way of knowing what they're going to do.
You're talking about how sort of your choice in instrumentation. How did their specific movements affect your choices for instruments, for levels, things like that, tempos?
Well, when you look at the different kind of movements they engage in, you couldn't describe the entire dance as smooth or aggressive. Like, there's a lot of light and shade. And so even going back to how they favour certain beats of the bar, like you've got, like, the way they appreciate 2 and 3 is this, the beats 2 and 3 in the bar is very fluid and sort of glides over the beat, and then 4 is the powerful one. And certain instruments are better at conveying certain things, and certain techniques within each instrument are better at conveying that. So when I was watching this, and I was really, I focused quite a lot on her movements specifically, because like traditionally in ballroom and it's often the man presenting the woman. Certainly in this case, it's seen that way, and that forced me to use a lot of instruments that I hadn't previously used. Because, I mean, not to get too technical, but like being a guitar player primarily, a lot of the stuff I play has a lot of attack. Like, say, if I'm strumming, that's got a very clear attack to it, and like even the drums, you've got the snare, you've got the pluck of a bass. And I needed some things that were really gliding, so I had to incorporate new techniques that I previously hadn't, like embracing some more electronic elements. So for example, say there's a part in it where he pulls her forward and she chucks her arms into the air. So doing that, I had to find a way of making it go wah. This kind of, it didn't have a clear, it didn't have a very clear definition. It didn't have a very clear place in the bar because her arms, like, we wouldn't, I mean, that there goes up. Even just a beat itself isn't one specific bit of time. It has duration. So it was just a matter of getting some of these really, not weird sounds, but non-traditional sounds to sync up with specific movements. And after a while, I attached smaller, I don't want to say stories, but smaller little bits of hidden meaning. Like, throughout she does a lot of stuff with her fingers. And for whatever reason, I took that to be slightly magical. So when she did those movements with her fingers, I introduced melody type instruments like a glockenspiel or a music box to get that kind of just, like an old kids cartoon when you see the witch do something like that and there's a cheesy sound effect with it. Having that low down in there allowed us to feel very connected musically with what was happening, as opposed to just there dancing to a backing track. And I really wanted their movements to define what happened. So as soon as I started attaching things to specific movements, and every time she did that, it brought that instrument in, that made a difference. The reason that, this is a long answer, the reason that I brought in the electric guitar as one of the main focuses on it is that I also felt that it was a very expressive piece, and the way I personally express myself best is through playing the guitar. So that wasn't so much influenced by them, not so much influenced by their movements, more so influenced by how am I best going to be able to convey the emotion they've conveyed.
Yes. Moving forward, will it change the way you interpret other people's art or your own?
I'm not sure. I constantly go back and forth about whether I want people to know exactly the story that I was creating, or if I'm happy for them to do it, to just fill in the blanks themselves. I like the idea that anything I create could provide some kind of service or support to those listening to it, whether they've taken something else from it or not. It's made me think about it. I haven't reached a conclusion yet.
Do you think you will?
No, I don't. I never really do. And in a way I think that's both a bad thing and a good thing. It makes me very annoying to talk to, but it allows me a lot of flexibility in terms of how I approach different projects. It affords me quite a bit of freedom. And it allows me to be inconsistent in a good way. I like the idea that I'd be able to surprise people. Yeah, unpredictable. I don't ever want people to hear something I've done and think, oh yeah, I knew he was going to do that. I can't stand that idea, so I like the idea that I'd be able to surprise people, and the fact that I constantly change my mind and go back and forth and have no conclusion on anything allows me to be inconsistent and achieve that. It's a bit of a backwards way about it, but in a way, yeah, I don't think I will ever reach a conclusion on most of this stuff. It changes daily.
And will you look to yourself for inspiration now, or will you look, because obviously this way, doing this project, you had to look at that. Will you look at other people around you, other people's actions around you for inspiration, or will you sort of just look at your own?
Well, part of the reason all of these sort of experiments took off was my interest in the idea that you can just create inspiration, that writer's block doesn't have to happen. That, okay, if you're sitting there and you're maybe in a band where you have a really specific style and you need to have your song sound like your band, then it might be tricky to write the next song that sounds like that band. But if you're open to just doing absolutely anything, and you sit down at the guitar and you can't come up with another rock riff, and you're then willing to go and put yourself in a new frame of mind, go and listen to it, go watch a poet perform, or go watch a play, and try and apply the same creative approaches and the same analysis to these other art forms, I don't think you'd ever really need to experience writer's block. If you're just open and looking for new things. It's not always that easy, and we all have unproductive days, but if you want to only do one thing, then it's hard. But if you're willing to just go anywhere, then you'll still be able to create something. Even if it's something you never release to the world, you might learn something in the process of creating that informs the thing that maybe pays your bills, for example.
Well, it's been fascinating, Jax.
Yes, thank you.
So that was Jax Richardson. Very melodic and moving music there. If you want to see more of him, check out the links below. Also, don't forget to check out the others who took part in today's experiment, as well as having a look at last month's experiment as well.